Welcome everyone to Forming the Future podcast series from Michelmersh, and today we're kindly joined by Andrew Tam, Associate of Gort Scott. We're also joined by Emily Herbert, the Marketing Manager of Michelmersh, and Sarah Gresley, Innovation and Sustainability Director of Michelmersh. Today we are in the podcast series titled Architecture and Climate Change, and we really want to discuss a whole range of subjects with Andrew on the impact that architecture has on the physical imprint for the sector towards the environment, exploring what policy changes have happened of recent or we're expecting to take place, and what changes might be on the way for us as a sector. We've also got some great examples with Gort Scott of some fantastic clay brick buildings which have won numerous awards. And so to kick off, it'd be great, Andrew, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Forest Road, the project which won the medium housing development category at the Brick Awards last year.
Great, thanks Sarah, and I'm really delighted to join you guys. Thanks for inviting me for this podcast. Yes, so I was involved in Forest Road, which I'm very pleased to say is continuing to get shortlisted and hopefully collect more awards. But we're probably talking about the Brick Award, which we were really, really pleased to win last year. It was earlier this year. It was earlier this year, wasn't it, actually? Yeah, just losing track of time. But yes, the project is in Walthamstow, and it's an apartment block for the developer Pocket Living, who specialise in affordable housing. And the development actually has 90 homes. If you know Walthamstow, it's actually along a really, really arterial route that goes through the borough. It's right opposite one of the nicest parks in Walthamstow and William Morris's house.
Yes.
And so we really put a lot of care and attention into the design of the building, and actually we'd like to think that it's a building that gives back as much to its surroundings as it does to the people who live in it.
And it was really highly praised, wasn't it, Andrew, by the judges in particular for its high quality and workmanship as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the other awards? I think it's in the AJ Awards and the British Home Awards as well.
Yeah, and then it recently picked up a Housing Design Award, and it's just been shortlisted for a Civic Trust Award. I mean, wow. I'm getting embarrassed talking about it.
And what was your role, Andrew, on the project? Because I believe you took a quite senior role in the design of this building.
Yeah, so I was really lucky enough to see the project through from winning the bid right through to it being completed, which is quite rare in the world of architecture. Yeah, I was the lead on the project.
Fantastic. And for you, obviously you chose a clay brick from our Florin factory as well. Was the clay brick fabric part of the design specification of the building to sit within the surroundings? Did it also have an environmental impact? What was your design choices?
So, I mean, as a lot of us will know, and architects practicing in London, brick in a way is a necessity, but it's also a really logical choice. A lot of built fabric is already in brick, and I think at Gort Scott our approach is always to look at the existing context and respond to it in the best way possible. So in the case of Forest Road, there were a lot of really lovely Victorian terraces around, and also thinking about that kind of heritage of arts and crafts in Walthamstow with the kind of legacy of William Morris. Brick was just a kind of really straightforward choice. But what was probably more complicated was actually trying to find something that would sit well with the surroundings, because it wasn't like everything was red brick or something, everything was kind of London stock. It was a real mixture, and so we really wanted to find a brick that was able to pick up all that character, but kind of also have its own distinct quality. So that was the kind of steer towards that choice of Florin.
How did you think about the design and for the future, and how it's going to live on for years to come? What was your thought process for that?
So another thing is, we feel a really great responsibility to be as sustainable as we can. And I'm actually pleased to say that we've been now a kind of registered B Corp as well for a number of years. And in the case of Forest Road, I think, and in many of our buildings, we really want to make those buildings last for as long as possible. And we know that brick is a product that can last for centuries and outlive the original use of buildings quite often. And so I think for us that's just as important in terms of considering sustainability as lots of other things.
Andrew, that's something that we've been talking about in some of the other series in the podcast is a campaign that we started many years ago called Think Longer, Design for 200 years, not 20. And that very much resonates with what you were just saying about, a product that has that great longevity, durability, and it gives also a safety aspect to the homeowner, to know that their building will be around for many generations to come. It will require little to no maintenance, and therefore little to no operational carbon throughout the life of the building. For you, given the fact that obviously we're working really hard to get EPDs of our different products, and obviously we make hundreds of different products, so that's a challenge in itself. To get data on these products and also to work towards a 60-year life study period, for us it presents another challenge, which is that, again, like what you were saying, with our products lasting at least 150 years, if not way more, it feels like it's being underrated, because architects, designers, contractors, we're all wanting to understand the life cycle analysis of a building from cradle to grave. But it's really hard to get the data. It's really hard to also be able to compare like for like, because everyone's using different elements of an EPD, whether it's A to D or further forward. From your perspective, is that challenge something that you guys are seeing at Gort Scott? Is it something that you're using within your design decisions now? Is that availability of the data, and also are you calculating the whole full life of the buildings when you're making your designs?
Yes, I mean, I think there are loads of challenges that we just have to tackle head on. It's our kind of responsibility to do so, and there is definitely a climate emergency that's very much happening already. But I think it's been interesting that, just going back to Forest Road, it's been kind of going through all these awards, and we're having to kind of do submissions, because we've had to then retrospectively calculate the embodied carbon of the project, and that's been kind of helped by others in our design team, including our services engineers at CO2. And it's interesting, that kind of process of kind of retrospectively trying to estimate it. And we actually think that Forest Road comes out at, I've just got the kind of stats here, it comes out at 1,124 kilograms of CO2 per square metre, which happens to sit below the GLA's whole life carbon benchmark for 2022. And the building itself was designed, well, the whole project began in 2019, it was finished in 2024. So it's quite good to kind of see that, we've designed something that was in a way a little bit ahead of its time, and that's kind of what you always have to do. And I think, increasingly we're going to have to design for, 5 to 10 years ahead of the current standards, given how long projects are taking to procure. But in terms of green specification and kind of sustainable specification, I think we're also developing a library and a kind of tool within the office that is trying to do what you're saying, Sarah. So kind of collecting as much data as we can on that kind of life cycle, helping to inform specification choices based on that. But yeah, the kind of idea of material passports is very much still very current, and data is incomplete.
Are you finding that your clients as well are starting to change the hierarchy of their decision making and what is important to them? Are you seeing sustainability becoming a more important factor in how they brief you and what they want to see from your designs?
Yes is the short answer, and I'm really to say that. I think increasingly through policy changes, through maybe just lots of different factors, it is really good to see that, especially for clients who are more conscientious and who are maybe kind of create better projects, we are seeing that sustainability is coming to the forefront. It's something that we put at the top of our priorities anyway as a practice, regardless. So I think together, from all angles, we're kind of trying to push that agenda forward, although I kind of feel like we're not doing it fast enough.
I think we all feel in the same boat there, Andrew. We're all really trying hard to push forward for positive change, and it's about collaboration. It's about all of us doing it together, and it must be a challenge for each individual practice as well to have that kind of library of data and keep that up to date as well, because that's one of the issues that we are finding as well. As soon as we publish something, it's immediately out of date because we're working so hard to decarbonise that those figures just 6 months on or 1 year on are so different from the previous year. And so you could be having specifiers choosing things based on previous information. And it's really hard. It's really hard to make sure that we're all stepping up to this digital transformation and sharing of data as well. And it's really welcoming to see the likes of BIM as it's transformed over the years, and now digital twins and digital passports, like you say, so that we get better communication of information across the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, as one of my roles within the office, I mean, we're talking about Forest Road here, but actually it happens that I'm also leading one of our internal working groups for what we call integrated technology. So we're very, very interested in how not only BIM, I mean, our kind of working group goes across all technology that we use in our day-to-day work, but how that integrates with kind of approaches to sustainability. So we do work really closely with another working group in the office, which we call the Environment Action Group. And we've actually got 6 of these working groups set up, which go across different sectors and act as a kind of ongoing research and knowledge base for everybody.
That's fantastic. We've got a group internally called the AI and Emerging Technologies group as well, and we're finding really exciting ways, both from a customer front end perspective, but also a back end operational efficiency perspective. And we are working on projects currently of how we can optimize and improve the data within our factories of every single process, how much energy we're consuming at every stage, improving the product quality, but indeed bringing down that carbon by reducing our natural gas consumption. So it's really exciting to see the way that we can use machine learning and then progress that onto AI to actually make small but incremental changes that make a massive difference to our carbon footprint. So it's really exciting, as the person who leads that group as well for Michelmersh, to be able to start to see some of that transformational change that we could start to make and to analyse both the risks and the opportunities to the business of these different types of technologies.
Yeah, just out of interest, how is AI being used?
Lots of ways. Lots of ways. I think there's a lot of different employees using it, obviously, for making their time more efficient. Workflows, we're looking at a lot of workflow technology at the moment to, again, make cross-departmental work a lot more efficient, speedier, easier for people to gain information. We are reviewing how we can use that from a customer perspective so that you don't have to call through or email through to Michelmersh. How can we give that data and information that people want at the end of their fingertips in the middle of the night if they wanted to? So we're looking at all sorts of ways we can do that with customers. We've got some really exciting projects where we're looking at how we could affect AI within our burners, within our factories, to automatically move and change the burner temperatures down or up according to different atmospheric conditions or temperatures of the clay as it's coming into different spaces, etc. So there's some really exciting things going on. There's lots of other things which I can't talk about either, which are exciting, and we're evolving and looking at different consortium partners both in the UK and in Europe who can help us to achieve some of these goals. But for us, the next few years is all about data and optimization, because first and foremost we want to reduce what we use before we go on to alternative fuels. And as you know, we did the world's first hydrogen project. Yeah. We know it can be done, and we are also looking at really exciting ways of bringing that to commercial reality as soon as we possibly can. In the interim, whilst we're working on that, we are focusing on improving that data and optimization piece, because it's absolutely where we can make change happen really quickly.
That's great. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
How would you say AI is changing things in the way that you respond to briefs and make a change with architecture in the built environment at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we're finding kind of a similar kind of trend within our practice, and we're actually in the process of defining our own strategy to using AI, even though we have a smaller group inside the office who are testing a whole series of different AI tools. So it kind of isn't just kind of the fancy making visualization side of things, which everyone is posting left, right, and center about, but also more boring things like, helping to check through documents or identify standards that you might miss as a person reading through a very heavy document, or helping to devise a marketing strategy, or helping to, do all sorts of stuff that are kind of wider things within the practice. So really interesting to see how that's impacting on the brick manufacturing process, which I think we're all, as architects, we're very, very interested in, but maybe don't know enough about sometimes. So
Well, you're always welcome to come and have another tour or something, Andrew. Always
yeah.
welcome. How are you finding things like the Future Home Standard and Part L, energy efficiency and heating systems, and these kind of regulations that are right in the forefront this year, and obviously over the recent years in different consultation periods, etc. How are you finding that these regulations are changing your decision making, or are they not changing your decision making?
So, I mean, it's interesting that you've talked about the future home standard. So, I'm not thinking about Forest Road now, I'm thinking about other projects that we have in our practice. And we've actually been designing projects to that future home standard and promoting it to our clients. But that standard has actually been quite slow, or slower than we thought, to come into force. So, we are in our work in the housing sector already anticipating that and trying to work to that or go beyond that. In many cases, we're kind of actually pushing for passive house and other standards alongside it. But I think, kind of just thinking back to Forest Road, we also design our buildings with quite a kind of loose fit, or a lot of adaptability, in the sense that Forest Road is a project that actually where all the homes are naturally ventilated, and there are choices that you can make that are very project specific sometimes, that are kind of out of the norm, where you think, oh, well, every single residential project is going to have an MVHR system, it's going to have a gas boiler, it's going to have this and that. And I think, but as standard now, and for a number of years, we've been working so that if we have an energy centre, and you usually will have an energy centre in a kind of bigger block, then that can always be retrofitted with kit that then perhaps plugs into a future heat network, so you don't need the boilers in the same way. And I think it's that kind of attitude towards designing something that has the flexibility to integrate systems that don't yet exist. Yeah.
That flexibility is definitely a really important one, and I'd be curious to hear, Andrew. Obviously, we've spoken in recent podcasts as well about circularity, and also the need to not just focus on new homes but retrofitting homes so that we are prepared for climate change and resilient housing stock going into the future. Are you seeing that something as a focus within some of the projects with Gort Scott? Is it balance between retrofit and reuse, or kind of adapting the uses of buildings for other purposes? Is that something that's becoming more frequent for you?
Definitely. And I think it's a kind of, it's a conscious decision for us as well to kind of increase our involvement in retrofit projects and our expertise in retrofit projects. So that is very much a direction that we've been traveling in. And I think personally, as an architect, I always think first now, do I actually need to build something new? And I think that's an attitude that everyone needs to take in the built environment. But yes, we have been kind of working on projects not only in the residential sector but across workspace as well, where we've been kind of looking at some really interesting retro projects which aren't just about conservation and heritage, which it might have been associated with a long time ago, but now it's much more kind of on the front foot and about sometimes changing a building's use completely. But yes, I think all of us are also either renting a home or owning a home, and the challenge of doing that in your own home is also really huge, and I think about that every day. So
it's certainly something that we're focusing on as a business as well, is to try and bring more of those circular principles into our business model into the future. We're exploring ways that we can expand on the recycled content within our products using waste that's obviously inert from other types of waste streams, other sectors within the products. Also that again comes back down to that collaboration piece. We had a contractor on one of the recent podcasts who regularly reuses product and recovers product from buildings, and he was quite clear that it's something that is a proportional aspect. It very much still needs matching with new products to make the flexibility and adaptability of the new design. But there's really great opportunity there into the future, especially when we start to consider how we can make these homes more thermally efficient, adapt to the changing weather conditions that we're expecting over the next couple of decades.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking of, things that we've been trying to do. I mean, yeah, it's been more in the kind of workspace sector that I'm actually thinking of, off the top of my head, where just because you've been talking about that contractor that uses a lot of recycled or repurposed material, and we just completed an office retrofit in central London that where there was a very good story with some of the steel furniture that was actually made bespoke, I believe, from recycled steel from a ship or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that is something that's going to be increasingly common within all of our projects, that you'll see things that look new that actually have come from materials that have existed for a long time, and I think that's great. Yeah.
Is it becoming more now part of your research and decision making then, to not only look for new materials but also look at what recycled elements and refit elements there are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think actually wearing a slightly different hat, I know I'm kind of representing Gort Scott here, but I also work away from Gort Scott, and I consult for an arts and culture organisation called Hive Curates, and that was kind of a conversation that Sarah and I also had kind of on the side when we were sitting together at a table at the Brick Awards. And I'm just thinking about circularity there, because we in that organisation, they often have to occupy spaces in a very meanwhile capacity, which basically means it's temporary, and that after a certain amount of time that space will then need to be vacated after it's occupied. And very, very kind of immediately and directly in that field of work, I've been looking at helping them fit out a space with a system that can be completely reused and completely demounted. So it's kind of, completely circular. So I think, it's kind of part of my design brain the whole time.
It's really exciting. And are you finding as well that part of the thinking and the focus into the future, this is part of, again, and kind of another conversation that we've had recently, is about behavioural change in the built environment as well, in terms of we can specify and install fantastic systems within the buildings that will mean that the operational energy cost and consumption for the user, the homeowner, is as low as it possibly can be. It's also about how people use the space and making sure that they use it, they ventilate it, they heat it in the right way. We had a conversation about how we're all quite used to, when you leave a room, you turn the light off, but have we got the systems in place that turns the radiators off when you're leaving a room, and making sure that we're using our homes in a way going into the future that we're being conservative about what we consume.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was wondering when I saw the topic of this podcast whether I was the best placed person in the practice to talk about it, because we have another member of our practice, a fellow associate, Jonathan Mann, who has a dual role. He leads on both sustainability but also on compliance. So we have an in-house kind of building regulations principal designer, which is something that we found necessary, and that's a whole other topic that could probably take us hours and hours and hours. But he went to AJ Retrofit, which was, I think last week, and he posted a couple of really interesting things that actually jogged my mind when I was thinking about today's podcast. And he absolutely also said that the number one thing was about behavioural change because it costs nothing in terms of carbon, but also in terms of money quite often. And he kind of showed a couple of studies where, from the presentations that he saw on the day, where he was kind of comparing the graph of how we changed in terms of health and safety and kind of construction design management since regulations have changed several times, and how that has steadily caused decline in injuries and fatalities on the construction site. And he was matching that, saying, actually, if you change behaviour, you can consistently do this. Why aren't we doing this for climate? Because it could go exactly the same way. And so, yeah, I mean, in my own house, I have, I kind of think about that a lot as well. And you can do small things where you install, like for my radiators, actually, I've got smart valves installed. So as soon as none of us are in the house, they definitely don't turn the heating on.
Yeah.
And things like that can really, really give you quite big gains, even if you haven't upgraded the fabric. So I think increasingly, it's not just a fabric first approach, which I think obviously you would take to new buildings and retrofit projects that are much more intensive, but actually behaviour change can do a hell of a lot.
Do you get much chance to kind of go back to projects you've worked on and talk to the end users and find how they're using, living, working in them?
Increasingly, I think we want to. So I think another thing that we really want to factor in much more formally into our process is that kind of post-occupancy evaluation side of things. And not only from the data side, which we're doing, I think, quite well on, but actually, as you say, understanding kind of anecdotal experience and lived experience from people in our projects.
Yeah, I imagine it's invaluable.
Yeah, I mean, as an architecture practice, we're now finding ourselves kind of over 15 years old, which I don't know if that still counts as young or middle-aged or something. But it doesn't give you the hugest amount of scope to kind of go back and say, oh, I think that project was done 10 years ago. Or there's a few projects that were done 10 years ago where you can kind of go back and call some up and say, how are you doing? But hopefully in time, we're going to increase that pool.
Are you seeing there any changes with the designs that Gort Scott are making in terms of biodiversity net gain and trying to include more natural spaces within the spaces?
Yes, I mean, just thinking, first of all, with Forest Road, biodiversity net gain was a key concern of part of the landscape strategy, I should say, because we also had a landscape architect on board in BD Landscape, and we were thinking about how the building could improve upon its site from what it was. And also, there's the kind of metric of the urban greening factor, which we also sought to kind of increase as we went along. But in terms of biodiversity net gain, I think we were thinking in terms of the way the roofs of the building could work to increase the surface area that was available to nature, as well as some of the kind of built fabric, the building fabric. So bat boxes and bird boxes were integrated in our buildings. And even the kind of planting was quite sensitive to both, from a practical point of view, being not too high maintenance, but also probably good for biodiversity, good for bees, good for all sorts of things. And I think that applies at all sorts of different scales, because actually, away from Forest Road, the project that I'm working on right now is one that's at a whole scale of a city. And so I think that's where I always kind of push myself to think about everything that can make an impact, because every small incremental change on a kind of project that has 9,000 homes can make a massive difference.
Absolutely. For us, we're actually expanding our brickology range, which has the bee bricks and bat boxes and bird boxes, etc. We really see the importance of trying to increase the accessibility of these types of products to both house builders and designers like yourselves and contractors to be able to use. It has been a struggle given the somewhat U-turn that's happened within the current government of removing some of the Swift box kind of and laws that were put in place. So we're going to keep plodding on there. We're going to keep expanding on those ranges and seeing what we can do to offer even more products that can enhance those habitats and those spaces. Andrew, just to kind of go off in a slightly different direction, we've learned that you've been appointed as a member of the London Borough of Haringey's Quality Review Panel. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do for them?
Yes, so it's really nice that actually I think architects are part of built environment professionals, a pool of professionals who make it onto these design review panels. So for those of us who do this day in, day out, very often as part of the planning process, projects that have more public value or kind of more of a major development would come in alongside the usual pre-planning engagements with officers. They would have to go through these design review panels, and it's really nice to be able to sit on a panel and actually look at projects from the other side and help other architects or advise other architects and empathize with the things that they're kind of going through within their projects and the challenges that they face. So yes, I'm a kind of panel member for the Borough of Haringey, and there are a number of us in the office who actually sit on, I think, probably around 5 panels across London.
It's fantastic. It must give you the opportunity to see outside of Gort Scott all sorts of other different designs and planning permissions that are coming through, and different people's perspectives, and to have the opportunity to comment and feedback on that. It sounds excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the involvement, I think this kind of collaborative attitude that must be taken to everything just cuts through everything, and I think it even goes into this design review process, because I think in architectural education we're very used to criticism, and that's how our whole kind of education is founded. So we kind of critique each other on our designs, and that's how we learn, through kind of things that we fail at or things that we excel at. I find that instead of it being kind of like a design crit environment, which isn't particularly helpful, I think being a built environment professional, understanding the challenges that the schemes that are being brought forward to the panel are facing, and trying to give really constructive advice, knowing that you could be very much sitting on the other side and having to deal with the pressures of the client wanting one thing and the planning authority wanting another thing. It's just a lovely position to be in. I think it kind of helps create higher quality projects that will create better cities in general.
I remember having a similar position in Jersey and the Channel Islands, and it felt really special to be part of a group of people who were really trying to think about what was the best for the future of that particular place. So, Andrew, you bring back a lot of memories talking about crits. Obviously, you and I both studied at the Architectural Association School of Architecture together, and you're making me anxious now thinking back to those days through our presentations. So it's nice to hear, to be on the other side as well, and to give that advice and that kind of critical feedback without being, kind of too subjective as to the person's design, but more about the intent and the context as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of trying to just, I guess you're in a luxurious position as a panel member, because you get to see a project, you can kind of say what you want about it, but I think you also need to understand your responsibility, because things that you say will get recorded, and it will become part of a report that gets given to the planning officer, and that actually carries a lot of weight. And I think planning officers, especially at Haringey, they always tell us this, that at committees, the councillors who are at the committee and planning officers and everybody will have reviewed the feedback from these panels. And they carry a lot of weight. So you kind of understand that you have to be careful what you say, but you have to be also honest with what you say. And it's not so much about kind of saying what you like or don't like on a whim, but being as informed as possible about your own feedback and your own opinions.
Yeah. It's a great role to have. As a kind of a finisher, I was just wondering, with all the changes that are coming up over the next 5+ years, from technologies or from policies, also from just changes in design and trends and expectations, is there one thing, putting you on the spot here, but you could say that you're particularly excited about that is going to help you or excite you in your role in the coming years?
Oh, that is a good question. That is getting me thinking. I think I'm probably going to try and answer it from the point of view of the project that I'm working on at the moment, just because that's easiest. So there's I think I am allowed to talk about this. It's a project called Old Oak in West London. So it's so my client is the Old Oak and Park Royal Development Corporation, and they're a kind of wing of the Mayor's office, and a big project is happening over the coming decades for a new piece of London, if you can believe it or not, but it's happening around the new Old Oak Common Station, which is for the new high-speed line that links through to Birmingham and the north of the country eventually, hopefully. And I think we're kind of trying to design not only 5 or 10 years ahead, but decades ahead. So I think and that's the kind of project with the big impacts that is always at the forefront of my mind at the moment, where every decision can make a massive difference, and we're very keen for it to be this kind of world-class exemplary project that puts London on the map as being a sustainable city, or having, examples of really, really sustainable best practice. And that aligns with the Mayor's own targets for net zero coming in very soon. So I think rather than one specific thing that excites me, that does excite me, like the idea that you can be, I don't know how I've managed to get myself into that position, but be helping to lead something that potentially you can get very, very right and hopefully not very, very wrong. So, yeah.
That sounds really exciting. I very much look forward to sitting next to you at the Brick Awards in years to come on the Old Oak there, Andrew, as well.
I don't know if we'll get to build all of that.
Fingers crossed. We must be positive and optimistic. It's been really, really interesting chatting to you today, Andrew. So I want to say a really big thank you to Andrew Tam, Associate at Gort Scott, to Emily Herbert, Marketing Manager at Michelmersh. It's been a real pleasure talking about architecture and climate change, relevant policies, etc., that are affecting us today in the built environment. And this was part of the the Forming the Future podcast series from Michelmersh. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.